Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast where a behavioral scientist examines what it's like to live a humorous life. Glimpse into the lives of the funniest people in entertainment, business, and science as your host, Dr. Peter McGraw, explores their habits, motivations, and secrets to success. Get ready to fire up your brain and your funny bone. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to I'm Not Joking, the podcast that looks at the lives of funny people. I'm Peter McGraw. Today's guest is Mark Masters. Mark is a comedian based in Denver, Colorado, and he specializes in clean material and has performed in showcases in New York City and Miami. He's just kicking off his career and recently published a book, Not Good Yet, that addresses his first 6 months as a stand-up comic. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, great to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming. So, this should be an easy question for you.
Okay.
If you weren't working as a comedian, what would you be doing?
I'd certainly be making a lot more money.
Yeah, no doubt.
And have a healthier ego, probably. I think right now I'm completely focused on the comedy. I would love to do, I love that bumper sticker that says my life is better than your vacation. I would probably do something around vacations because I've always envied people who work in resort towns, vacation stuff. Maybe run a bed and breakfast or
bartender in Cabo.
Exactly. Yeah. Something along those lines.
So you'd run is that your final answer? You'd run a bed and breakfast somewhere?
Yeah, sure.
Where would you run it?
A ski town, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah, in Colorado. I love Colorado.
Yeah, that's a nice. How about Steamboat?
Sure. Perfect. Yeah.
I like Steamboat.
Okay.
And so why say that? So tell me more. Why would you run a bed and breakfast? Why would you want to do vacations?
I think what motivates me is seeing people have positive experiences that I helped create. That's part of what got me into comedy. It's fun to make people laugh. It feels good to generate that experience. Similarly, I would enjoy when I do my stand-up routines, a lot of times I talk about being an Airbnb host. That's something I do. And one of my favorite things about that is when guests just have a great time. And it doesn't necessarily need to directly relate to something I did, but I enabled that experience. Okay. So if they come out and, a boyfriend proposes to his girlfriend and we had the most magnificent hike and we saw these elk and it was just unbelievable, that to me it just warms my heart, makes me happy. And that's fun in a way that money isn't.
I see. So you're an Airbnb host. What kind of property do you have?
I have a small condo up in the mountains and I have a place in Denver, my house, that I sometimes rent out the whole thing when I'm traveling.
Is there a secret to being a good Airbnb host?
Yeah, it's the same secret to everything. Preparation.
Okay.
People will ask the same questions over and over again, and experience, right? You can be a pretty good Airbnb host on day one, but guaranteed an Airbnb host who's been doing it for 5 years is better than a starting Airbnb host. Very similar with comedy.
So what's the three big questions that you get?
How do I work the television?
Okay.
What's the Wi-Fi password?
Right.
Beyond that, usually
where's the weed store? Where's the closest
that's pretty
weed
common.
store? Yeah.
That's pretty common. I would say something about the kitchen. There's always, but the question varies. Do you have a grapefruit spoon? Do you have a popcorn kernels? Do you have olive oil?
I'm starting to realize that I might be the world's easiest Airbnb guest.
Okay. Yeah. Well, we love you as hosts.
I don't ever ask questions, although I will give you my one huge pet peeve.
Yeah.
It says that there's an iron.
Okay.
There is an iron.
And it's like a dormitory style.
It's like, so the iron is like barely an iron. You know what I mean? It's like the cheapest possible iron that you could purchase. And then the ironing board is one of those little tiny ones that you have
for a dorm.
That's for a dorm.
Yeah. And
I had this experience recently. I travel for business a lot, so I'm trying to dress well, and I'm admittedly a tidy individual, and I like to look crisp. And so I went to an Airbnb. They had one of those things, and it's just like it just doesn't work very well.
Yeah.
You're hunched over, it's too small, etc. I mean, like I'm 6'5", so my pants are like crazy long.
Sure.
It just so happened, fortunately for me, that the apartment was just nearly above a Bed Bath & Beyond. So I went down to Bed Bath & Beyond and I just bought a full-size iron.
Yeah. That happens. Guests leave things all the time that are improvements. And I'll say as some advice to everybody, part of being a good Airbnb guest is actually asking some questions. The hosts appreciate some questions. They'd rather hear that you couldn't figure out how to get CNN to work than to later find out in a review that the TV wasn't working.
That's true.
And I do have a pretty common question I get is more about hair dryers. A lot of women will want to clarify that there is a hair dryer. They see that there's one in the list of amenities, but sometimes they go places and it's not there. They always want to double check to see if they want to fly with it. I've had people check in with me about my irons. In one place, I have a huge, very nice iron and ironing board. In the other place, I'm very upfront. It even says it in the description that it's a dormitory style.
Good for you. That's nice. Yeah. You sound like a great host. Well, so when I told them I'm just going to buy one, they said, well, keep the receipt and return it when you're finished.
Oh, that's...
And I was like, and here's the thing that just killed me was I bought the cheapest big ironing board. It was $20.
Yeah, it's not expensive.
The dormitory one was $10. So the choice was I'm going to save $10.
Well, a good host will reimburse you. That's what I do when things break or if you can, that saves me a lot of headache. If I don't have to drive over and drop off a new supply and you're willing to go buy it, send me a picture of the receipt. I'll round up to the nearest $10 and just send you that money through Airbnb. And
well, guess who didn't get a perfect score on their...
Those stars are important.
I get it. Well, that's neat. So I think that tells me a little bit about you. So you are new to comedy, but you're not new to life.
That's right. Yeah.
You're not a 23-year-old right out of college pursuing his dream.
Early 40s, had a full career. We don't need to get into, but just kind of on a lark, decided to check out comedy. That's a story in my book, Not Good Yet. It's kind of how I got into this. It seemed to me like something very difficult and challenging. I love challenges. And it seemed, we were talking just before we got on about how I enjoy long books that I get into. Like if you get into a short book and you really enjoy it and then it's over in a couple of days, you're kind of sad. Kind of like when a Netflix season ends and there's no more episodes. You're ready to binge watch the next thing. When you get into a book that's really long and you're enjoying it, that's one of the greatest thrills for me. I felt like getting into comedy, there was the potential for that. This was going to be something that was going to be so difficult that it would keep my brain engaged for a very long time. Yes. People talk about, like, I'm coming up on 1 year and I'm a baby in comedy.
Oh, yeah. You've got 9 more years to get good.
Yeah, that's what they say.
So you'll be in your 50s.
Yeah, yeah.
Look, Rodney Dangerfield started in his 40s.
Yeah.
So the book, we're both actually reading the same book right now.
Yeah.
Comedians by Cliff, what's his last name? Mark's pulling it out right now.
Yeah. Cliff Nesterhoff.
Nesterhoff, yes. I almost said Nostroff. Nesterhoff. Yeah. And the subtitle is Drunks, Thieves, Scoundrels, and the History of American Comedy. And it's really a history book more than a comedy book, I feel.
Yeah, I'm only 80 pages in, so
I'm like,
I don't have a good sense
I've got like
yet.
2 chapter head start.
But I love it. I'm like a super nerd about all things comedy. And so it's a big book. The listeners can't see it, but it's thick. So I'm excited to spend time enjoying it and learning from it.
Yeah, that's great. So, as an adult and as someone who's had a career before, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you, Mark. You have your shit together.
Okay.
So let me tell you the ways that you do. One is you answer my emails promptly.
Yeah.
Secondly, you showed up early.
Yeah.
Right. So most of my guests, I have to get a message from them, meet them at the curb, get them to the room, get them to the bathroom, do all these things. Like you took care of all of that yourself. Like you showed up 5 minutes early. I was like, oh, do you need? First of all, the fact that you found this office is impressive.
Right.
Which means that you were here really, really early.
Yeah.
You also found the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so it was funny because I was actually on the phone with a previous guest, Gia. So if regular listeners will remember Gia from a few episodes ago. And I was chatting with her and I said, I got to get going. I have a podcast guest going. He's a new comic. He's 6 months in. He's already written a book. And she said, I guess you don't have to ask him if he has a bed frame. She's like,
yeah,
which I think a lot of new comics do not have a bed frame.
Yeah, I have a lot of disadvantages in comedy. I get tired late at night. These mics are miserable sometimes. 1:30 in the morning. I've been waiting 3.5 hours. I love watching the other comedians. Any open mic hosts out there listening, I'm not complaining at all. But it is exhausting to be up that late, and that you just got to put in the time, and the time sometimes is very late. So that's a disadvantage. Sitting in these uncomfortable stools for 3-4 hours. I'm older, man. Like in my 20s, That would have been easy. Now, like I'm almost sore, like I played a game of ice hockey the night before, just from sitting awkwardly for 3 or 4 hours. So that's a disadvantage. I'm not as up to date on all the memes and whatever's like the current zeitgeist of young millennials. Actually, it's very instructive
Who
to
are
me.
at the open mic.
Yeah, exactly. That's the audience. So I need to talk about those topics, but I don't necessarily know them. Like it happens all the time that I have to ask a comedian later, like, I didn't get your joke. Can you explain, what's this word mean? And a lot of times they're really dirty words. I won't say the one I'm thinking of right now. But
this has an explicit rating.
Oh, okay, yeah. So
say it.
bukkake was the word. I heard that joke like 3-4 times and had no idea what it meant. Finally asked the comedian, "Hey, what does bukkake mean?" And he had no problem explaining it to me. I was like, "Okay, I get the joke now."
So this is just a caveat for the listener. If you do not know what that word means, be careful before you Google it. Like, do not Google it on your work computer.
Yes,
that's all I'll say.
Absolutely.
And I will put comedians, the book and Mark's book in the exhibits, but I will not put anything about that.
Yeah. So those are all disadvantages. There are other disadvantages as well. And there are advantages. And I run shows down in Denver, so I'm very familiar with your challenges, kind of herding cats, herding comedians. But one of my advantages, I'm very organized. I have 20 years of professional experience, phone calls, emails. Just last night.
Were you in sales?
No.
Okay.
No.
Do you not talk about it?
I don't talk about, no, I don't. I don't. So it kind of leave it a minute. It's not impossible to find out who I was.
That's fine. I respect that. I like a good secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like a good secret.
So just last night, I ran a show, which you'd actually be interested in. We should talk about it later. It was called Duck, Duck, Deck. It's like a TED Talks with less preparation. And I had a comedian who was running late from work and let me know, Sarah Benson, shout out to her.
Oh, yes.
Terrific communication. I was so pleased and impressed that she actually let me know. She was only running like 30 minutes behind, and it was no problem for the show. But just the fact that she reached out and did that was terrific. It's very unusual in the world of comedy.
Yeah. So for the Humor Code, my co-author and I went to New York, and we met with Chris Mazzelli, who runs Gotham Comedy Club. So, just like,
yep, I've been there.
It's a great comedy club, and Chris runs it. It's a tight ship.
Yep.
He's a total pro. And we were just asking him questions about, advice and so on. His advice was like, don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
He's like,
I'm not funny enough to be a jerk.
Yeah. He said, there are plenty of funny people. He's like, if you want to come back, be nice to the staff.
Yeah.
Show up on time.
Yeah.
Like, communicate,
Yep.
These kinds of things, like be a professional.
Yeah. The being nice thing is really important to the ethos of being a good startup comedian. I talk about that in the book a little bit.
I had a previous guest, she was a very early guest. She's a newish comedian, not as new as you are, but we got to know each other while she was kind of getting into comedy. Her name's Valley D. And one day we were on the phone and Valley and I started talking about all the things that she feels like that she does. Like, she's really embraced this professional attitude. So, tipping the bar staff and, like introducing herself to different people, letting the host know that she's arrived, taking notes, following up with people. Like, I was like frantically writing down all the things that she was talking about doing, both before, during, and after her just working on her material.
Yeah.
And sending thank you notes and, and so on. And it was 20, 30 things, which I think is interesting because we have of course, laughter is the currency, but there's all these other things that matter in terms of getting invited. I'm sure that Sarah's going to, when you think about who am I going to have again?
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, I can rely on this person, even though they didn't,
even though she was running a little late, but
that
was something out of her control. And
yeah, so that's great. So yeah, you clearly have your shit together. You've already written a book.
Yeah.
About your first 6 months.
Yeah.
When did the book idea happen? Did it happen before you started?
It was probably 4 months in. I started thinking there are a bunch of reasons I wrote it. One is to kind of give back to the community, to comedians who've been doing this for 5-10 years. That seems ridiculous. The things in this book will be so trivial and obvious to them. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of people that don't know, who've never gotten into comedy, that don't know you're supposed to introduce yourself to the host or even how to sign up at an open mic. I have a whole chapter on how to do your first open mic. And then a whole other chapter that explains my first open mic, which is a hilarious story of failure.
as
here
they
and there.
tend to be.
Kind of like the story in your book as well.
That's right. So I've done stand-up 3 times in my life, and it went well 1.5 times.
Great. Yeah. So if you're into Schadenfreude, like laughing at other people, you can laugh at all my failures.
Indeed. I think that's, and also I think the thing is, it's actually tough for a 10-year veteran to write a book about starting out in comedy.
Yeah.
Because you forget, you don't know what you don't, you don't
have that context. And really that was another thing. I wanted to capture a snapshot in time.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll never really be at that point again. I'll never be that bad or that not good.
Yes.
The title of the book is Not Good Yet.
Right.
Which is optimistic.
I have that saying about writing. I say I'm not bad. I'm not a bad writer.
Okay.
Like I'm not a good writer, but I'm not a bad writer.
Right. Yeah.
So I get that idea. So I have a lot of questions that I want to ask you about this stuff. So do you journal?
I've recently started just free writing.
Okay.
I have this new thing where I get up early and I do 20 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of writing, and 20 minutes of reading before I start my day. And the important thing, are you familiar with the intermittent fasting?
I am.
Okay, so the basic idea is...
an extra hour of not eating.
Yeah, so I've been doing that with my smartphone, or trying to, kind of unsuccessfully, where I don't look at the smartphone before I go to bed. I'm less good at that, but in the morning I'm getting better at it where... a lot of people sleep with their smartphones, and I don't want to look at it very first thing when I get up. I want to do some stuff, remind myself what life was like 20 years ago, because I lived just fine without that thing.
Yes, that's right.
So that 20 minutes of writing, it ends up turning into a little bit of journaling, because I just write kind of as quickly as I can, as much as I can spit out. Sometimes it's jokes, sometimes it's memories from the night before, sometimes it's just...
And what are you writing in a
pencil on paper?
And in like a notebook?
Just freeform, like printer paper.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Right now, I haven't really figured that out. I kind of like I like the individual pieces of paper because it's like a blank slate every day.
Oh, that's
I don't
neat.
feel like it's a continuation of anything.
I think we have a lot in common. So I'm moving to Los Angeles. I'm doing a sabbatical.
That's exciting.
This has come up before, and I'm using that as an opportunity to change some habits.
Okay.
So my morning habit right now is basically get up, get out of the house as quickly as possible to a cafe and do my writing for the day.
Okay.
And I'm starting to think that the writing is, and the reason was that I started doing that 10 years ago. So now it's like,
and this is academic wrining, like your journal articles, etc.
Yeah, typically, but I'm doing more and more non-academic writing, and I'm doing more and more non-writing projects. For example, podcasts.
Okay.
And so I have a little more admin than I used to do, like I used to have, but I'm working on a new book. And so I'm starting to make that more of a priority, where I'm working on the book first thing in the morning.
Fiction or nonfiction?
It's nonfiction. Okay. And in any case, I'm moving to LA, and first of all, the coffee shops aren't as good a place to work as in Boulder, Colorado. This is an early rising town. LA is not an early rising town. It's a big city. It's a little more of a late night place. And then the co-working space I signed up for doesn't open till 8 a.m. And I'm an early riser, as I imagine you are.
Sure.
If you're having trouble.
Other than the nights I get home from Lions Lair at 1:30 in the morning.
Indeed. To me, I don't even know if I could start a stand-up career, because I don't think I could be functioning.
There are earlier mics, so that's kind of a special occasion when I'm out that late.
Oh, as an aside, I want to tell a quick story about this, because you wrote about open mics. So I love this story that I found out, and it has to do with open mics. So I don't think most people know this, that Jamie Foxx, his name is not Jamie Foxx. I mean, it is now, but it wasn't back then.
Okay.
He was having your experience of going to open mics and having to sit through, and I'll say it, some really terrible stuff. And the main thing that you'd want to do in an open mic is to work on your material. Listening is helpful, but working on your material is primary.
Yeah, I'd interject for the benefit of new comedians that it is really important to watch the terrible comedians.
I agree.
You can get something out of anybody's performance, even if it's like how they're holding the microphone. You're like, I don't like the way they're holding the microphone. Let me make sure I don't hold the microphone that way. Take copious notes, etc. It will keep you engaged.
I think that's fine, but
yes, there is a level of pain there.
If you could do that for 45 minutes and then perform, is better than doing it for 3 hours and then performing.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
So we agree. So Jamie recognized that there were very few women at these open mics, and the hosts would often want to space out all these white dudes usually, you know what I mean, with some diversity, whatever that might be, and women being obviously very diverse given the base rates of open micers. So Jamie Foxx made up a name that sounded like a woman's name.
Yeah, that's genius, actually.
Yeah, it's a little diabolical,
Very clever.
but it's also very smart, you know what I mean? And so he would get called up earlier, and then the name stuck, as you might imagine.
Yeah.
So that's my aside. So getting back to this thing, so I like hearing you that you're doing this 2020 thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And,
it's working pretty well.
Where did you pick that up?
I just made it up.
Okay. So it's funny because I came across it in a book called like the 5 a.m. Principle.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to do a different 2020.
Is it specifically 2020?
It really is.
No way.
Like, I'm really
That's
impressed
hilarious.
that you
Wow.
did this. So this is what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to get up, brush my teeth, drink some water, and then there's a gym that's going to be in my building. I'm going to go downstairs to the gym. I'm going to do 20 minutes of movement. So this might be a little yoga. It might be jumping rope. It might be some weight stuff. It might be stretching. You know what I mean? It's just whatever I feel like my body needs to kind of get going.
Yep.
Depending on what workout I've done the day before or whatever. Then it's move, then 20 reflect. So that's journaling or meditation. And then 20 minutes of what this guy, Robin, the author of this book, calls growth. So that might be reading something, listening to a podcast, reviewing your to-do list for the day, making your to-do list for the day, whatever that might be. But one of the things so first of all, I'm not going to listen to a podcast because I'm not going to turn my phone on.
Yeah, I think that's a real important element to what I'm doing.
I think it's incredibly important because it's just such a distraction. And I turn my phone off when I go to bed. I'm lucky I don't have anybody that has to get a hold of me.
Right.
And so I can afford to have my phone downstairs turned off.
I mean, almost anybody, unless maybe in some extreme situations of parenting, can disconnect for 10 hours. We used to do it all the time.
All the time.
So it should be possible.
I agree. So so how long have you been doing that?
Just a couple weeks now.
Okay. And how's it feel?
It feels good.
Yeah.
I didn't have enough time one day to do all the reading, and I was like disappointed in myself. I'm not very strong on meditation. I really have no idea what I'm doing.
What? No one is.
Okay. Jerry Seinfeld might be.
Yeah. He's been doing it for
forever.
30 years or 40 years or something. Yes.
Yeah. But it's surprising to me. I don't know if this is real or not. Check back in with me in a few months. I feel like I'm sleeping better because my brain is looking forward to the meditation the next morning.
That's neat.
I don't know if this is real or not. I'm getting up a little more energized. I feel like it's my brain telling me, hey, it's time for that 20 minutes of quiet. Let's go do it.
That's fantastic. I'm really excited for you. I know that mine will take some time because I have to unlearn 10 years of a habit.
Yeah.
And the good news is I'm going to a new place. I'll have different cues. And I haven't had her on as a guest, but I'm sure I will at some point, either this or my forthcoming podcast, Wendy Wood. She's a USC professor who does work on habits. And her research shows that the best way to start new habits is when you start a new lifestyle, start a new job, you move to a new house, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
So let's chat about the book a little bit.
Okay, great.
So you've designed this so it has a little memoir element to it.
Yeah.
But it also has a little bit of how-to. So someone who's like, I'm thinking about doing this would be a good resource.
Yeah. My ideal sale would be parents of an adult who's been considering open mic comedy for a while, and this Christmas they just buy thousands of them and just send them to their kids, and they might never do anything about it like most people do. A lot of people think, hey, I'm going to go to an open mic this year, and the whole year goes by and they never do. When I talk to people who have just gotten off stage for the first time, many of them this has been a long time coming.
I see.
They've been thinking about it for a long time.
So just hit me with just a few pieces of advice you would have, and then I'll see how I did.
Sure.
So I'll reflect back on my open mic experience.
Yeah.
I'll let you know you can tell me how you would grade me.
Okay. Yeah. So the most important thing I think is to introduce yourself to the host, to make sure the host knows who you are, and actually reintroduce yourself. So we talked about sometimes these mics go 3-4 hours. The host is not going to remember your name
an hour in and your face. So if it's the very first time you've been there, even if you've only been going there a month, you've been there 4 times, they're mostly weekly, just remind the host. It's polite. You don't have to be aggressive about it. Just be like, hey, just wanted to remind you, this is my name. I'm excited to be here, whatever.
Check.
Okay, you did that. Great. Record your set and analyze it afterwards. If you can, do video. I talk about it in the book. I don't video record all my sets, but I have like a little tripod and a not inexpensive, but not super expensive GoPro that is very handy to video record my sets. And I get a lot out of analyzing my movements on stage, and I pick up a lot of bad habits. Like, I still play with the microphone cable, which is distracting.
Yeah.
Even as I'm watching it, I can see what a bad habit that is. So trying to cut that out. How'd you do on that one?
Half a check. So
Okay.
it was recorded, but I really haven't. It's so painful to watch. Of course.
Sure. Yeah. That gets easier,
Yeah,
but
sure.
it never gets super easy. It's fun when you actually do well and get to listen back to that. In fact, sometimes I will, I know the sets that I've done. I did a set at Vision Quest Brewing here in Boulder. I don't often do out-of-town open mics, but I love them. Maybe we'll talk about that later. It's a totally different scenario being an out-of-towner. I will watch that mic sometimes when I need a confidence boost. I video of it, and I did really well.
That's great.
Which is unusual.
I've done this. I've done this with professional talks, so I don't have to do it anymore because I've really settled on one keynote that I have a script for that I wrote, and that now I've performed enough times that I pretty much have it. But early on, I would watch old talks to sort of jog my memory, in part because I wasn't doing enough regular speaking. And so even on the professional side of talks, I've had that experience.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
Study the other comedians. There's all kinds of ways this can manifest itself. What I do is I write in my joke book. I take a notebook with me to the open mic, and I'll write down, the date, where I am, the host, how many minutes we have, stuff like that. Actually, let's go back. Find out how many minutes you have and how the light works, and watch. You will be told one thing, but in practice it might be something else. So you might
describe, just for the listener, what do you mean by how the light works?
Yeah, so there is generally, not all mics work this way. Sometimes you just go as long as you want, but that's pretty rare. Usually the host wants you off the stage because you're not very funny. So let's say it's a 3-minute mic. They might light you at 2 minutes, letting you know that you have 1 minute left. And that light could be anything from a waving hand. Most frequently, it's the cell phone light, and they're flashing it at you.
Yes.
It could be a red flashlight. There are a number of ways it works, and you can tell just by observing the comics who go before you, because trust me, if it's your first time, there'll be a lot of comics before you, a lot of chances.
Yeah, the more experienced people get to go earlier.
Yeah, and so sometimes somebody will tell you, okay, it's a 3-minute, you have 3 minutes, and the light will come at 2:30. And then you'll observe that they're not really lighting people until 3:15, and everybody's going 4 minutes.
I see.
So if you're a newer comic, that's a big difference. If you need to fill 4 minutes, first off, you can get off stage early. You can do 90 seconds of material. People will applaud you for giving time back to the room.
Yeah, no one ever complains if you wrap it up early.
Right. But if you're up there awkwardly kind of hemming and hawing and trying to make up material on the fly because you didn't have an extra 30 seconds of material, you should know that going in. You can tell by watching the comedians before.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. There's another thing, kind of nuanced version of that. In some places, if there's good lighting, you won't be able to see into the audience. If you're in a theater, sometimes you can't see the light. And if you watch the comedians before you, you can tell whether they can see the light or not. If you keep your eye on the host, you see when they light the comic. Oftentimes you'll see the comic nod or point a finger or make some kind of gesture that they're letting the host recognize that they're aware that they're supposed to be wrapping up. At some mics, you'll notice the comics are never acknowledging the light. They can't see it for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's helpful in two ways. One, it lets you know when you get up there you probably won't see the light. Also is a hint that when you get up there, you might not be able to see the audience, which is a little bit uncomfortable
I think
if you're used
takes
to seeing the audience.
I think it takes a while to get used to that. That came up in the Humor Code when we were in Los Angeles. We visited the Comedy Store, and the Belly Room, I think, has very bright lighting in your face. Maybe you can see the first row.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you're not seeing anything.
Yeah. It's fine if there's a lot of laughter, but if it's quiet out there, it is scary.
Yeah, I can imagine. And you never want to, like, shadow your eyes to make sure there's actually an audience. I couldn't tell you about that from my experience, just because.
Sure. And then getting back to the taking notes on comedians, I just will write down their name, maybe a couple highlights, funny words I heard, or premises that were interesting to me, words like bukkake that I don't understand, but everybody else clearly understands.
Yes.
And I'll kind of maybe a habit or something they did that I liked or didn't like. Both are equally valuable to me as a comedian that's really just starting and very fresh and moldable. You know, I still have an opportunity to change all those habits, so I want to see what people are doing that the audience likes and the audience doesn't like.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure you have lots more, but people have to read the book if they want those.
Yes, notgoodyet.com.
So, speaking of having your shit together, you also have, like,
pretty decent website.
You have a good website.
Yeah.
Good landing place. And
yeah, I'm way ahead of my comedic skill with my marketing skill.
Yeah.
Other than I'm not on Facebook, which is a huge, like, there are people gasping all over right now. You can't be a comedian and not be on Facebook, but I'm trying to break that mold. I have a whole chapter in my book called Not on Facebook.
Okay.
And I do want to let everybody out there know there are a lot of comedians who are friends with some Mark Masters in Denver, which is not me. Kind of vaguely looks like me online, but if you think you're Facebook friends with me, I am not on Facebook.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
So why are you not on Facebook? I mean, look, I can imagine why you're not on Facebook. Yeah. I'm barely on Facebook. Right. But despite the fact that a lot of comedy invites and promotional stuff is happening on Facebook, you decide to persist.
Yeah, so first off, I've never been on Facebook my entire life. Like when it came out 20-ish years ago, I was like, this is a silly idea. I don't like it. I'm not doing it. I'm resisting.
Yeah.
And only recently has the tide kind of turned where people are like, hey, all right, you're onto something.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of comedians will confess to me that they're jealous that I'm not on Facebook. I've never seen it, but it sounds very toxic. And
I would say this, my opinion about Facebook has changed, right? Facebook used to be fun. It's less fun now.
Okay.
I mean, that's the short story.
Yeah. It is a bummer. There is one school of thought that when you're early in comedy, you don't really want a big online presence. Like, I'm very careful not to let my video out.
And so I want to ask about that.
Okay.
Because I went searching for video of you performing, and I couldn't find it.
And even the stuff that I do send, like I just sent some to a comedy club for a road trip that's coming up, and I like watermarked it. So I said, for this comedy club, May 2019. So like if it ever gets out, I'll know who
they let it out.
Leaked it, and that's not that I can do much about it.
No, but I get it.
But
yeah. So I was interested in that. So why not?
Well, I think the common school of thought, and I can't speak from experience on this, is that when I'm 3 years in as a comedian, I will be embarrassed by my best material right now. I'm very proud of some of my material. Apparently, a couple years from now, I will think it's terrible.
Got it.
And so you don't want that video out there. Bookers might look at it and just get the wrong impression of you and just see an older video. And so that's a reason, that's a benefit to not being on Facebook right now. Like, I'm just not well known to the community online, and that's probably okay. It's probably for the better. I'm mostly an open micer. But occasionally I do, like, it's a real hindrance right now. I'm planning a road trip to Seattle, Washington. I'm going Denver to probably Grand Junction, and then Salt Lake or Boise, Idaho, Missoula, Montana, where I'm playing a VFW lodge, and then Seattle, Portland, and then back all the way.
Oh, sounds fun.
And I'm trying to book comedy shows all the way along the way, and it's nearly impossible without Facebook. Every community has a Facebook group, I think they call them, where out-of-town comedians can find show bookers and get matched up. And the Missoula story is actually pretty funny. I'm very proud that I'm doing 20 minutes at a VFW lodge in Missoula, Montana. I basically just Googled comedy in Missoula, found a newspaper there that had articles and had people's names and their phone numbers.
Old school.
Yeah, I just texted random strangers and through a series of connections that led to an email that led to something else. I got booked on this show, and I'm pretty excited about it.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you're just deciding to keep this constraint and work around it, which is not being on
For now.
Okay.
It may, like a lot of more experienced comedians tell me, it will become impossible.
I see.
I'd like to break that mold and prove that you can do it without Facebook, but I can definitely see
Look,
disadvantages.
Sarah Silverman and Chris Rock don't need Facebook, so
Yeah, not
you
either of them.
can
yet.
leapfrog to that spot. You can just skip all that.
Well, there is a common saying to be undeniable.
Yeah.
Which I am not yet, but I would like to aspire to that and someday be so funny that people have just heard of me through word of mouth.
Yeah.
And there's another thing. I'm okay with being patient. Like, I don't need everything yesterday. So a lot of times I need to go to a town twice. So I haven't been to Portland or Seattle as a comedian. It's okay with me if I need to go there and just hit the open mics.
And
Let
then get
people
names and
get some names, a couple phone numbers and emails, and then the next time I'm coming into town, I'll contact them. They'll remember me, and hopefully I made them laugh. Like, I recently did this in Boston. I went to Boston for the first time, made some good connections, was funny at open mics. So I mentioned this earlier. I'll just say real quick that if you're a struggling open mic comedian, one of the best things you can do is go out of town to an open mic. It's so fun. Like, one, that 3 hours of mind-numbing watching the same jokes that you've heard hundreds of times it's all fresh material.
Yeah,
you get to watch brand new comedians. Now, some of them are going to be bad, but they're going to be bad in unique ways that are interesting to you.
versus seeing the same person work the same bit over and over again.
Exactly, which is an important piece of the puzzle. You need to do that to improve. But the other thing is, when you perform, you can show off material you've done 20 times at your local open mic, and you look way more competent than you should, and way funnier than you should. And your material is going to be fresh and new to that audience, and you're going to get real, genuine, reflexive laughter, which you've been seeking forever in your own comedy mic, open mic scene.
Yeah, but not having but when people have heard your joke before, they already know the...
They almost, like, if they hear your name, they'll turn off. That's where I thought the Jamie Foxx story was going.
Oh,
because
I see.
In some ways, like, I have my own biases about certain comedians. You know, I hear their name and I just, like, tune out. I look at my phone, or I pick up a book, or I'm like, I've listened to this guy or woman 50 times. They're not going to have anything new. And occasionally that mold breaks and they'll have a funny joke, and I'll be like, oh, I need to pay attention to that person more. And that's a bad habit I have. I should watch with fresh eyes every comedian, every time, no matter who it is. But that's just human behavior.
You are a professional, Mark. I'm impressed. I had this experience once with a comedian who shall remain nameless, and actually a funny guy, but he just kept telling the same jokes, like, for years.
Yeah.
The same jokes. And I was just like, he's never going anywhere. I was like, that guy's not going to be, he's not going to be successful. And so when he would perform, I wouldn't pay attention. And then one day he showed up with new stuff. And I was like, whoa, you know what I mean? It was so good. It was so fresh and so on. I just lamented his loss of 2.5 years of growth.
Yeah, that's a real struggle for, like, I churn out new material all the time, and I have some, like, go-to jokes that just work, and I know, and I'll rely on them. But I think I'm maybe too quick to throw away material. Like, I never let jokes mature. I don't perform them 20 to 25 times, partly out of politeness to the other open mic comedians. I feel like
that seems like a mistake to me.
maybe, yeah. I'll figure that out in time.
Yeah, that's right. That seems. I mean, look, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
Right. It's a good problem to have so much new material that you could throw away stuff that has promise and that you haven't developed enough. As an aside, you use this phrase, be undeniable. So,
yeah, and that's not mine, by the way. I've heard Adam Caton Holland say it. I don't know where it came from originally.
I was asking because the place the place that you hear about is Steve Martin has this saying about be so good they can't ignore you.
Yes, exactly.
So it's a shorter, pithier version of be so good.
I think that's the Denver version of that Steve Martin quote.
Yeah,
because a lot of comics say that in around Denver. I think it was in Adam's book even.
I see. Yeah, that makes good sense. So I want to talk to you a little bit about. You do clean material. This is a funny thing. You know Nancy Norton. She's been on your show. So she was at Comedy Works the other night when I got to do a few minutes, and I met her before the show. We're actually going to have lunch after this. I'm excited. Oh, good.
She's being very generous with her time. There's another thing, a tip for comedians. if you can find veteran comedians who will talk to you about comedy, do it.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to feed them, though.
Yeah, I'll buy her lunch, no problem. So, anyways, I introduced myself before the show and was just like, hey, I'm a clean comedian. And I went up and I told a joke that I'm almost afraid to say this without the context, but let's just say it was a joke about Neverland Ranch. So you can guess what direction I was heading. I didn't swear at all, but I reflected on it later that, you know what, that isn't exactly clean material necessarily. Yeah. It's not Bukaki.
Did she say something to you about it?
No, but I'm sure I'm going to talk to her about it at this lunch.
I see. But whether you should be doing that joke?
No, whether I can call myself a clean comedian and where the line is. Because certainly, like, you know, your theory, the benign violation theory, you need to have some kind of violation.
Yeah, you need to push the envelope, yeah.
And a lot of times I think about, like, PG-13 movies, which are incredible, or what you can see on TV. It's really racy compared to what, you know, was on TV 30 years ago or whatever. So, for me, I just don't quite know where the clean line is, but I try and do clean.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's harder. It's like resistance training, you know, running with weights on your back, whatever. This is a common. I think Jerry Seinfeld said this 30 years ago, that if you want to be really good in comedy, you shouldn't swear. And swearing is a crutch. It's a shortcut to getting a laugh. And so I've kind of adopted that philosophy, and someday in my personal life I'll swear. In fact, I have a joke about that.
About how you won't swear on stage?
About how people ask me if I ever swear, because I never swear at the open mics. And now I remembered. It's well, of course, around small children. And frustrating experience.
That's a good joke.
Yeah.
Because your website is so developed.
Yeah.
You have a list of joke topics.
Yeah, it's like a SEO kind of, and frankly, it was a filler. Like, I didn't have any, like, now I have, like, appearances. I've been on showcases all around the country. But when I launched it, there was nothing there, really.
So I wrote some down that caught my eye.
Sure.
And if you want to tell the joke, I would welcome that. But I also, even if you just want to tell the premise.
Sure, I'm
curious about that. So, Bitcoin.
Okay, yeah. It was a Boulder joke, actually. I have a friend who's an accountant in Boulder. She specializes in intergenerational wealth transfer.
Yes, okay.
And
so this is basically rich people getting their kid their money without paying too much taxes.
Exactly, yeah. And so she's had some Bitcoin millionaires wheeze into her office recently, and she says the plans vary, but step one is almost always the same. Move out of your mom's basement and get your first boyfriend. That was actually the very first joke I ever wrote.
I see.
And it's not great. It's a little sexist, for one. Like, why do they have to have a boyfriend? Or why does it have to be a boy?
Right.
Or a guy?
It could be, yeah, you can see how you could adjust it to find someone who'll date me.
It's also, I have this problem, it's a little sophisticated. Like, intergenerational wealth transfer almost requires explanation for most people.
Which I just did for the audience. Yeah.
And, you know, like at the South Club or in Boulder, the South Club being the Glenwood Village Comedy Works down in Denver, which is a different audience, kind of more wealthy than the downtown club, a little older as well.
Indeed.
They'll get it. Like that term I got from Billions off Showtime.
I see.
You know, that's where I got that. So people have heard it, and they're, you know, kind of vaguely aware that rich people do funny things with money.
And you have to understand that Bitcoin has been this sort of, you know,
and that
multi-level marketing
too, right? Like, it's interesting how topical material, like, you know, recently Bitcoin's been doing really well. So maybe it's in the news and people know what it is, but 6 months ago it was doing terrible and it had a stink around it and nobody wanted to hear about it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
All right.
Consumer DNA tests.
Yeah. I had an Airbnb guest who, how do I set this up? He was really upset about those consumer DNA tests you see on TV. I didn't know a little tube of spit could tell you why you've always looked like your dad's best friend.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. That joke, I would rate it a good joke, but the premise is hacky. So many people have done consumer DNA, 23andMe, consumer DNA test jokes. I don't know if it passes the level of being so original, but it's worth it.
I see.
Yeah.
You know what I love about what we're doing right now is I don't even need to critique the joke. You say the joke and then you critique it yourself.
Well, these are old things too. I made this list a long time. That was my very first open mic. I told that joke as well.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
That's cool. I have to ask this one. Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh yeah, this is one of my favorite openers. Let's see, how do I get into it? I travel sometimes to do comedy. I was in Las Vegas recently. I did a set at the Silver Nugget Casino. Excuse me, 2 things in common with Sammy Davis Jr.
Okay.
1, we both performed at the Nugget, and 2, we both probably will never perform there again.
Okay. That's nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Have you tried to do 3? Like,
like make it a
magic
triplet?
rule of 3?
Yeah, not with that one.
Not with that one.
But a lot of my jokes are,
of course.
Yeah, follow that rule.
That's right. I could do this all day, but I want to do 1 or 2 more.
Okay. We'll probably get to some that I'll say, that joke isn't any good, I don't want to tell it.
That's fine. Smurf?
Yeah.
That's not any good. Okay.
Yeah. Had something to do with the beard that I grew out.
Mattress?
Yeah, that's currently a closer for me, and I don't want to divulge it.
Got it.
Yeah.
We'll do job title.
Yeah, that's a silly joke just about how people have really complicated job titles now. Like when I was younger, people were just like engineer. And now it's like software quality advisor, engineer, vice, whatever.
Yeah,
it's like a 9-word title.
And they're just doing the same job.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Well, those are old. It's fun to remember those.
Yeah. I pulled the ones that kind of really caught my eye.
Yeah.
Swiss cheese.
That was a dumb joke about fondue.
Got it.
It was about melting pot and America being a melting pot of a bunch of cultures, but I went there and I can't even remember how it went. It was only Swiss cheese. That was a bad joke. That was not good. Not one I'm proud of.
No, that's fine. That's really fine. As an aside about job titles and this, that notion about names and stuff, I recently I started on the book, so you were talking about long books, short books.
Yeah.
So I think you and I differ a little bit. I actually think that many books should just be an essay on Medium. And so many essays on Medium should be a Twitter thread.
Yeah.
Like, I think things tend to be a little too long. There's a book that came out called Bullshit Jobs.
Okay.
That you might get a kick out of, just knowing your work. It's basically, these are jobs in which even the person who's performing the job can't justify its existence.
Right. Yeah, sure. There's so much of that, by the way.
I think that
these are like 20-year-old comedians listening right now. You have no idea how much of that is out there.
It's true. And so it actually came out of a really provocative essay. I wish I could remember the name of the person who wrote it. I'll put it in the exhibits, of course. But the essay is really quite good, and you get the kind of gist of the book. But if you're like, so I want to read the essay, but you probably want to read the book in that sense. But I really got a kick out of that. But what I like about it is, the takeaway of the book is that it turns the normal status system sideways. So, for example, a comic is not a bullshit job. So a lot of people think being a comedian is a bullshit job, but it's not, because comics actually really create value in the world. At least the decent ones.
Working professionals.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, there's people who are, they get, in exchange for money, do comedy. Yeah. They create value. A janitor, that is not a bullshit job. A window washer is not a bullshit job, because if they stop doing their job, the world becomes a worse place as a result of it. And yet there are people in corporate structures who are vice presidents who, if their job went away, the world changes in zero ways. And so I think it's a kind of profound idea, and it's worth asking yourself, do I have a bullshit job?
Right.
Or not?
Yeah. Since you mentioned Medium, I do have a very untrafficked Medium account with a couple essays on it.
Okay.
There's actually a giveaway on there. If you can find my Medium page, I think it says that I will mail you a copy of my book signed if you just send me a note, and nobody has redeemed it yet. Listeners out there, I'll send you an audiobook as well.
Will you ping me if someone actually finds
sure.
Medium
Absolutely.
and
follow that.
That'd be great.
Old school analytics.
Hey, Pete, I got an email from your, and please mention I'm not joking in the subject line.
Okay.
So I want to wrap up, but I'm actually really excited for you, because I think that a lot of people don't realize that getting good at comedy, that talent, of course, matters. That being smart and witty and observing the world matters, and being able to string together words in a way that are funny matters. But there's this whole underlying system that really, really matters. that allows people who may not be a Dave Chappelle to get good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to edit that out.
I think that you're absolutely right, and it's been really fascinating to me to see behind the curtain of the magicians that are quality comedians in the Denver open mic scene. These are people who get genuine laughter from me. The first time they made me genuinely laugh, I felt like I could never reach that level. And then I was so surprised to later see them do the same exact material. Like, I thought they were just coming up with it on the fly.
Well, good comedians do.
And then I'll go out to lunch with some of these comedians and find out that they take copious notes as well. And, you know, they're not, like, I keep spreadsheets of all my performances. I know that I've done 247 open mics since I started on June 25th, and exactly how many minutes that is. It's 18.6 hours or something like that. I haven't even worked 3 days yet in almost 51 weeks.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but yes, there is a lot of hard work and science to use something that you would relate to.
Sure, data. Yeah, this world of, you're doing data analytics.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's simple, but it's informative. So I wanted to close with a question, which is, and this is related to our conversation about books, but even beyond that, what are you reading, watching, or listening to that's really good?
Yeah.
That really stands out, not just the normal.
I do 2 books,
okay,
and 2 movies, 2 films. So, in books, City of Thieves is a book that I read last year by David Benioff, I believe.
Okay.
Just terrific. It's available in paperback. It's quick, it's short. It's just a great story. It really taught me about the importance of storytelling and just how it's beautiful. It's really well done. The other book is called Conspiracy by Ryan Holiday. It's the story of Hulk Hogan and Peter Thiel, the Silicon Valley billionaire. Fascinating.
Is this a new book?
Maybe 2 years old.
Okay.
I got option for a movie, apparently. So to me now.
That guy's got the magic touch.
Ryan?
Yeah.
He's a smart dude.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then in the movie side, I thought about this some because I listened to a lot of the episodes.
Because you're a professional.
Yeah. I'm really into these indie sci-fi movies, and so I have 2 that coincidentally came out 10 years apart. So one came out in 2004, the other in 2014, so I can't wait to see what 2024 will bring.
Okay.
But 2004 was a movie called Primer, which was made for the unbelievable amount of $7,000.
I think I've seen this.
So good.
I think I've seen this.
So good. It's a about Primer, P-I-M-E-R. And then the other one is Time Lapse. It came out in 2014. I saw it on Netflix a long time ago. I don't know as much about it, but it was really good. Good. It was impressive. And
Timer and Time Lapse.
But Time Lapse is 2 words.
Time Lapse is 2 words. Okay, good. Mark, thank you for making this easy on me.
Yeah, sure.
And B, thank you for contributing. This has really been a fun time.
Yeah, well, thank you for me. It's intimidating to be here. You're still accomplished, and there's guests like Neil Brennan and Wendy Curtis, etc. Like, I shouldn't be here right now. It feels like it's an imposter syndrome, but I hope the listeners enjoyed it and check out my book at notgoodwalk.com. markmasters.co. If you want to book me, I will do. What it says on the back of the book is Mark is available to perform at your showcase, work event, or dog's birthday party. I will do comedy anywhere. Look me up. I'll make it laugh.
That's great. Well, I actually like having new comics on here. I think it's a kind of an exciting time. So.
Perfect. And thank you for giving back to the community as well. Listening to the podcast episodes is very valuable.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to visit petermcgraw.org for more information about our guests, show notes, and social media links. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share with others. Join Dr. Peter McGraw next week for another fun,